Oh, I like this. Just watch this road holding. Here we go. Oh, wait until I tell the lads about this. The Escort Sport. I'm a happy man. I think I'll feel the finish on the 2-door. Jump in the boot? Yeah, plenty of room. 4-door? Yeah, why not? Spacious, comfortable, friendly car? Yeah. Well, I've got quite a choice. Sport, 2-door, 4-door. The wagon, yeah, I've got family, you see. The wagon. Yes, that's why I've chosen the Sport. I'll say... Yes, dear. You've chosen the family wagon. Yes, dear. Oh, love you, darling. She takes the decisions in our family, you see. But I'm the driver. Ford Escort, the fun car.
Welcome back. Now, Paul, you mentioned last week that we'd be taking a closer look at what I think is one of today's most tempting modern classic buys, if you call it that, the Bentley Turbo R. So
yes.
Shall we do that next?
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. And perfectly timed as well, isn't it? Because, Bentley Motors, they celebrated their centenary last year.
Yep.
And obviously there's a huge back catalogue of models aimed at today's classic fans. But I'm with you. I reckon the Turbo R, right now, that's the one to go for, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it's impressive how much you get for your money these days with them. And I've seen a few for sale recently. They've been mint, and they seem to offer spectacular value.
No, they do. Although, as with any Bentley or Rolls-Royce, I think the best advice is to spend the very most you can afford.
Yes.
And that way you're more likely to get a good, dependable example, aren't you?
Yeah.
If you buy the wrong car, then like any upmarket classic, a Turbo R, well, it can quickly become a bit of a money pit.
Yeah, nothing so expensive as a cheap Turbo R.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, although the Turbo R, that made use of, let's face it, well-proven mechanicals. After all, it was derived from the Mulsanne. That was essentially the Bentley version of the Silver Spirit Rolls-Royce.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the Spirit and the Mulsanne, they both launched in 1980. With the Bentley, well, it's little more than a rebadged version of the Rolls-Royce with no mechanical or performance alterations. Although there were rumours at the time, if you remember, that Rolls-Royce Motors, which still owned Bentley back then, of course, they were planning a proper high-performance comeback for Bentley at some point.
Yeah, I do remember those rumours. Of course, Bentley had that kind of image in its early days, didn't it? They'd be fools to ignore that. Back in the 20s, the racing models, they did so well at Le Mans and everywhere else that they entered. And then from the 50s, Bentleys became, I think, tragically, little more than rebadged Rolls-Royces.
Yeah, it was a shame. But things were going to finally change by the 1980s.
Yeah.
That original Mulsanne, it might not have been very exciting, but in 1982, of course, came the Mulsanne Turbo.
Yes.
And that marked the start of a process aimed at giving each marque its own unique identity, if you like. Rolls-Royce, that would continue to focus on luxury, the ultimate in luxury, while Bentley, that would become the ultimate in high-performance sports saloons, I guess.
Yeah, that's for sure. I remember that Mulsanne Turbo, that offered a lot of oomph, more than any previous crew product. It wasn't 10%, 20%, it was 50% more power, just thanks to the addition of a single turbocharger to that 6 3/4 litre V8.
Incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It gave the Mulsanne Turbo, 0 to 60 time in less than 7 seconds.
Crazy
Top
fast.
speed of over 135 miles an hour. That's for something as heavy as that.
It weighs about the same as my house.
Yeah, exactly, and probably the same kind of aerodynamics. And
I'm sure.
On top of all that, though, it still retained the same high levels of luxury, comfort, and equipment as any other Mulsanne.
Yeah, I seem to remember, though, those early ones, the rest of the Mulsanne Turbo's running gear, it couldn't quite match the sportiness of that engine, though.
No, it couldn't.
I was a passenger in one, Paul, when the chap driving it, I'd handed over to him on test, and it got away from him. He spun the thing.
Really?
Yeah. It frightened the living daylights out of me. Its suspension, in particular, that wasn't quite as highly developed as maybe it should have been, considering the kind of performance under your right
that's
foot.
very true. But that situation, happily, it was solved in 1985 with the arrival of the Turbo R. And it was a major step forward, wasn't it, Rich? The Turbo R, it had a thorough overhaul of its suspension, its steering, its brakes, as well as some aerodynamic improvements. And altogether, they obviously helped to increase stability, reduce drag, It was an altogether better car, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, fantastic. Worked brilliantly, of course. And I suppose here, for the very first time in many, many years, was a car that, do you know, I'm sure even W.O. Bentley himself would have approved of it.
Yeah.
It was a real hot rod, and he loved hot rods. Indeed, once the rather temperamental carburetors were replaced by fuel injection for 87, the model year, that Turbo R, that was hailed as one of the finest, most desirable cars of its era.
Oh, it was.
Before long, of course, well, Bentley sales, they were rocketing. They were matching those of Rolls-Royce.
Yeah, it was a real game changer, wasn't it? It was a huge success. And it lasted. I mean, the very last Turbo R, that didn't roll out of the Crewe factory until 1998, by which time Bentley had sold nearly 7,500.
It's going some. Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot for Bentley, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But of course, throughout its long career, the Turbo R, it was regularly updated and improved, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's certainly true. It took on a bit of a new look in mid-88, I think. It got the quad round headlight lamps then. It had got
that was a good move.
Yeah, that was that.
Yeah,
that really
that
perked it up.
transformed it.
Yeah. The bigger spoiler. It just looked altogether a bit more aggressive.
Yeah.
By 92, the old 3-speed auto, that had gone. It had got a GM... Their GM's latest 4-speed tranny. There was a new spec, the fuel injection, of course, the new spec by 95. There was some more styling changes, and the same year, the Turbo S,
the S
appeared.
Yes, yeah.
That was a very limited edition. I don't think there were more than 60 motor cars of the Turbo S, and every one of those cars had got 400 brake under the bonnet. And back then, I mean, you just didn't come across a car with 400 brake.
No, that was phenomenal for the time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But we shouldn't forget, even the earliest Turbo Rs of the mid-80s, they were pushing out the best part of 300 brake horsepower, which means that even by today's standards, there was some serious performance on offer.
Oh, yeah.
Rich, I've got a clip here from 1996, fairly late on in the Turbo R's life, part of a short promotional film created by Bentley for the latest spec Turbo R. So let's just have a listen.
Good stuff.
Still assembled by hand to tolerances of 10,000th of an inch, these finely balanced engines harness the most advanced electronic management and control systems. A new adaptive shift control system for Turbo R changes the transmission pattern to the style of driving and allows the maximum extraction of Bentley power and sporting exhilaration. To enjoy such performance in luxurious surroundings is the unique Bentley experience, and the sumptuous cockpit now sports some thoughtful innovations. A tilt-adjustable steering wheel swings up to allow easy entry and exit when the door is opened or the key removed from the ignition. The new center console and fascia layout present the driver with absolute control. A new center armrest now houses the CD multi-changer as well as the telephone. New veneered panels reveal the new in-car entertainment controls. The new center console also provides independent air conditioning to the rear compartment. A new seat design has improved comfort and support while providing increased headroom. So many Bentley engineering advances have contributed to safer driving throughout the history of motoring. Safety, derived through immense power in reserve for safer overtaking. Side impact protection bars, pioneered by the company in 1981. Anti-lock braking systems, perfectly suited to Bentley's high performance.
God, that's a neat find, Paul. Yeah, I like that. But of course, what was a seriously expensive car in its day is now rather better value all these years later.
Oh, yeah.
Although the most affordable Turbo Rs out there, they're not necessarily the best buys, are they?
No, you said it. I mean, unless you happen to stumble across a genuine bargain, of course.
Yeah, well, yes.
I mean, as with any Rolls-Royce or Bentley, it's all about how well the car's being looked after. the canny Turbo R buyer, they'll be looking for a full service history with all the maintenance and repairs carried out by a marque specialist, ideally. The kind of people who know what goes wrong with these high-performance Bentleys.
Yeah, that's good advice. I don't think there's anybody who knows more about buying one of those than you, so all wise words. I mean, what would be your main areas of concern if you were going out to buy a Turbo R today then, Paul?
Well, despite this being a very upmarket car, of course, body rot can be a problem. You know, these cars are getting on now, so you certainly need to look carefully. Certainly need to check the sills, first of all. The lower front wings, the rear arches, the lower rear quarter panels, and the spring mounts. Those are all vulnerable areas, yeah. But also cosmetically, look for signs of bubbling paintwork and previous repairs, because not everyone has looked after their Turbo R as well as they should have done, and there's been a bit of bodging over the years. Yeah, I suppose they've fallen into enemy hands as they get to lower money, and of course, you don't want a car with any cosmetic issues. No. And things like cracked veneer, worn or, heaven forbid, ripped leather or less than perfect paint. I mean, it won't stop you enjoying your Turbo R. No. It will be very expensive to put it right. It will, yeah. Mechanically too, though, there are some important checks. Especially, I mean, make sure for a start that there aren't any plumes of blue smoke from the exhaust. I mean, that could point to problems with the turbocharger. They're not unknown. And it's not unusual to find a Turbo R with worn dampers, bushes and ball joints. The rear suspension, that's a self-levelling system. Yeah, that's expensive. Yeah, so you certainly need to make sure that's working properly, particularly as the height control valves for the hydraulic dampers, they're prone to failure. Yeah, but one very good thing, I suppose, about those cars, well, the best thing, the good news, is the parts availability, isn't it? I mean, there's pretty much nothing that you can't get from a marque specialist these days. No, that's right. Turbo R owners, they're very fortunate. They are. Companies like Introcar, they can help with just about anything, really. In fact, when items are no longer available from the factory, Introcar will often get them remanufactured. So looking ahead, there shouldn't be any long-term parts supply issues, and prices, they're generally fairly competitive. Yeah, they are, and that's the be-all and end-all, isn't it? You're buying a motor car like that, firms like Introcar, they're going to keep them on the road. Yeah, absolutely. Without them, you're finished. And even better news is that any Rolls-Royce or Bentley owners, well, we've twisted the arms of the nice people at Introcar to get them squealing, and Paul's got a special offer for our listeners. People listening to this particular show, you could now get £20 off Introcar delivery charge anywhere in the world. That's just for our listeners. So in most cases, that would mean completely free delivery. All you have to do when you're buying from Introcar is quote CCTP, Charlie, Charlie, Tango, Papa, 20. That's Charlie, Charlie, Tango, Papa, 20. Yeah, free delivery. That's very kind of them. Yeah, they soon made the offer once I threatened to hurt them. You do it to me often. Talking of money, though, Paul, where are we in terms of Bentley Turbo R values these days? I mean, they seem to vary hugely. Yeah, they do, don't they? I mean, project cars, they can still be picked up very cheaply, of course. But as we've discussed, that's not something I'd recommend. No. At the top end of the price range, well, we have very low mileage Turbo Rs from the final year or two of production. They can still be £25,000 or more. But a budget of somewhere between 10 and 15,000, that should be enough to get you a tidy, well-maintained car with that all-important service history. Yeah. Funnily enough, Paul, I was looking at Turbo R adverts the other day. Oh, yeah. There are some very tempting buys out there. I've seen early cars in excellent condition for around £10,000. One that particularly caught my eye was it was a 1992 example, got 89,000 miles on it, so barely run in. 2 owners from new, nice. What you want, beautiful looking, one of the best colours, royal blue, one of the best interiors, magnolia. Oh, now that is a good colour scheme, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely glorious. And this car is currently up for sale with an independent Bentley specialist, exactly £15,000 on the button. I mean, 15 grand is going to buy you a basic Super Mini these days. That's true. And yet it can get you an absolutely immaculate Turbo R
And there's surely only one way that's going to go value-wise.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, all right then, Rich, maybe you should treat yourself to a Turbo R while they're still relatively